Sometimes God will give you something so heavy, so deep, so personal that the only reason he placed it in your hands was because he trusted you to carry it. He didn't send it for a press release. He didn't place it in your heart for you to run to the group chat or call up that one friend you think will understand. No, he put it in you because he knew you could be trusted with something sacred. And I know sometimes the first thing we want to do when we get a revelation is share it. We feel this rush of excitement, this need to validate that we've heard from God by getting someone else's amen. But some truths aren't designed for public consumption. Some are meant to marinate in your spirit before they're ever released into the atmosphere. We live in a world that teaches us to overshare. Social media makes it easy to feel like if we don't tell people right away, the moment will pass. But here's the danger in that. You can put something out into the world before it's ready, and it can get handled by people who weren't assigned to it. They don't know the weight of what you're carrying. They don't see the layers, the context, the prayers that brought you to this moment. And suddenly that thing God gave you as a gift starts to feel like a burden, not because it changed, but because too many hands touched it before it could grow. You have to understand, when God whispers a truth to you, it's an act of intimacy. It's his way of saying, I see you. I trust you. I'm bringing you in close. It's like when someone shares a personal story with you in confidence. They're not asking you to broadcast it. They're asking you to honor it. That's the same way God operates. And if we're not careful, we can take what was meant to be a private conversation with him and turn it into a public debate. Sometimes we share because we're looking for confirmation. We think, if I tell them and they agree, then I'll know it's real. But hear me, truth doesn't become true because someone else agrees with it. It was already true when God revealed it. And if you start relying on human approval to validate what heaven has already sealed, you'll find yourself shrinking when people don't understand it, doubting when they don't agree, or abandoning it when they criticize it. There's a reason the Bible says Mary pondered these things in her heart. She didn't run and tell everyone what the angel said about her child. She carried it. She nurtured it. She let it unfold. And maybe that's where some of us need to grow, in the ability to carry something without having to announce it, in knowing that silence doesn't mean weakness. Silence can be the strongest, most faith-filled response you could ever give. Because the truth is, when you put something sacred in the wrong hands, you give it over to interpretation, and people will project their fears, their doubts, their insecurities onto it. They'll tell you why it can't happen, why it's too risky, why you're not ready. And if you're not grounded, their words will start to sound louder than God's voice. That's why some truths must stay between you and him until you're strong enough to withstand the weight of outside opinion. And I get it. It can be lonely to hold something so big and not talk about it. But that's where trust comes in. Trust that God sees the wrestle in your heart. Trust that he knows the right time for the right people to know. Trust that if he gave it to you in secret, he'll bring it into the light when it's ready and when you're ready. There's also protection in privacy. Every moment you keep it between you and God is a moment you shield it from premature attack. Every day you keep it close is a day you give it room to grow roots. Because once something has deep enough roots, it doesn't matter who comes along with an axe. It will still stand. Some of you are holding a truth right now that feels like fire in your bones. You want to speak it. You want to shout it. But before you do, ask yourself, am I protecting it or am I exposing it? Am I releasing it because God told me to, or because my flesh is impatient? Because there's a difference between the right truth and the right time. You don't have to prove to anybody that you've heard from God. You don't need their applause, their approval, or their understanding. All you need is to carry what he gave you until he says, now, because when the time comes, you won't have to force it into the open. It will be undeniable and it will speak for itself. So if you find out this truth, keep it to yourself. There is something fragile about the beginning of a thing. When God plants a seed in your spirit, whether it's an idea, a calling, a dream, or even a truth about who you really are, it doesn't start out in full bloom. It begins small, hidden, and vulnerable. And like any seed, it needs the right environment to grow. If you take a seed and put it in the wrong conditions, it will never see the light of day. The same goes for what God is doing inside you. If you expose it too early, before it has the strength to stand on its own, you give room for doubt, negativity, and outside pressure to stunt what could have been something beautiful. We sometimes get so excited about the promise that we rush to show it off. We tell people before we've even begun the work, thinking they'll be happy for us, thinking they'll understand. But not everyone will understand. Not everyone will celebrate you. And even those who love you might not have the vision to see what you see. Their feedback, even when it's not malicious, can still be dangerous if it causes you to second guess yourself. That's why protecting what's still growing is so critical, because in its early stages, it's not just the dream that's fragile. It's your faith in it that's fragile too. There's a spiritual principle here. When a seed is planted in the ground, it is hidden for a season. It's covered. Nobody sees the roots forming. Nobody sees the internal strengthening happening before the sprout breaks the surface. But just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it's not growing. God often works in the dark first. He's building the foundation before the reveal. And when you share something too soon, you expose it to voices and forces that can disrupt the process. You have to be wise enough to recognize that not everything God is doing in you is for display yet. Sometimes we treat revelation like it's meant to be public the moment we receive it. But in reality, revelation is often an invitation to preparation, and preparation requires privacy. When you keep what God is growing inside you protected, you're giving him space to finish the work without interference. It's not about being secretive out of fear. It's about being discerning out of wisdom. Think about it. If you tell people about a seed before it grows, they can't imagine the tree it will become. So they'll evaluate it based on what it looks like now. They'll look at the smallness of it, the fragility of it, and assume it's not worth much. But that's only because they can't see what God sees. And if you're not careful, their lack of vision can start to influence your own. Some of us have made the mistake of announcing too soon and have felt the sting of watching something with great potential lose momentum because we invited the wrong opinions into the room. It doesn't mean the dream was wrong, but it does mean we gave it less of a chance to survive. You cannot expect a newborn to run before it learns to walk, and you cannot expect a calling to flourish when it hasn't even been rooted yet. Protecting what's still growing might mean saying not yet to sharing details with people, even close friends. It might mean sitting with the discomfort of wanting to talk about it, but choosing silence because you value its health over your need to be understood. It might mean letting people think you're doing nothing when in reality, God is building everything in you behind the scenes. This is where trust in God becomes so important. You have to trust that when the time comes, he will give you the platform, the opportunity, and the strength to release what he's placed in you. You don't have to manufacture the moment. You don't have to force the doors open. When the roots are strong enough, the fruit will come and it will speak for itself. And here's the truth. Things that are protected grow stronger. Just like a seed under the soil is safe from harsh winds and predators, your vision is safe when it's tucked away in God's care. Every moment you keep it shielded is another moment it's getting stronger, deeper, and harder to destroy. So if you've got something in your spirit right now that feels fragile, but full of promise, Resist the temptation to put it on display too soon. Protect it, nurture it, feed it with prayer, guard it with discernment, and let it grow in the quiet until it's ready to stand in the open. Because when what God planted in you is ready to bloom, nothing and no one will be able to stop it. There is a power in knowing something and not feeling the need to prove that you know it. We live in a culture where everyone feels pressured to show receipts, to have the last word, to make sure people recognize their worth and see their side. But there's a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't waste energy trying to convince anyone of what's already true. That strength is quiet. That strength is secure. That strength doesn't need applause to keep going. And that's the kind of strength that will keep you steady when the world is loud. Sometimes silence is not about weakness or fear. It's about strategy. There are moments when you could speak up, moments when you could clap back, moments when you could spill what you know just to prove you're right. But when you've been through enough, you realize that not every truth is worth throwing into the middle of the noise. Not every argument is worth joining. Because there's a difference between winning in the moment and winning in the long run. And often the long run is determined by your ability to stay focused on the bigger picture instead of being distracted by small battles. Quiet strength says, I don't have to prove anything to you because what I know is not up for debate. And when you carry yourself with that posture, you stop letting people pull you into unnecessary fights. You stop exhausting yourself explaining what they've already decided not to understand. You stop shrinking just because someone refuses to see you for who you are. There is also a peace that comes with restraint. Speaking out when you're provoked might feel satisfying in the moment, but it can leave you drained, frustrated, and off track. Keeping your peace isn't about letting people get away with things. It's about refusing to let them have control over your spirit. You are not obligated to engage just because someone wants you to. You are not required to announce your every move just so people can validate it. Sometimes the loudest declaration you can make is to keep going without saying a word. Let them wonder how you keep moving. Let them see the results instead of hearing the plans. Let your progress be your response. There's a power in letting your life speak for you, because no matter how people try to twist your words, they cannot twist the evidence of what God is doing in you. And let's be real, it's not easy to stay silent when you feel misunderstood or underestimated. The urge to defend yourself can be overwhelming. But if you pause, if you step back and breathe, you realize that explaining yourself to the wrong people will never change the outcome. They weren't built to carry your truth. They weren't given your vision. So why give them the power to shape it with their limited perspective? When you learn the discipline of keeping certain truths to yourself, you also learn how to protect your energy. And your energy is valuable. It's the fuel you need to do what God's called you to do. If you keep burning it on proving yourself to people, you'll run out before you ever reach where you're meant to go. Quiet strength conserves that fuel for what really matters. It also builds something inside of you, confidence that doesn't depend on outside validation. The more you practice holding your truth close, the less you need anyone to co-sign it. And that's when you start to walk differently. You're no longer tossed around by opinions. You're no longer shaken by criticism. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. That's the power of keeping something between you and God until He decides it's time to reveal it. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stay silent out of strength, not fear, you create space for God to move on your behalf. Sometimes He will let you hold your peace so He can show you what happens when He fights for you. And when He does, the outcome will speak louder than any defense you could have made. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to be the most powerful. You don't have to explain your worth for it to be real. The truth you carry has weight, whether anyone else acknowledges it or not. So stand firm in what you know and let your silence speak volumes. Because the loudest thing about you should not be your words. It should be your life. The moment you take something sacred and share it, you open the door for other people to put their hands on it. And I don't just mean physically. I mean with their words, their opinions, their questions, their doubts. You might start out feeling excited and sure about what you've discovered, but once enough voices start speaking into it, you can find yourself wondering if what you heard was even real. That's the danger of exposing what God has given you before it's ready. You risk letting the noise drown out his voice. We all have people in our lives who mean well. But meaning well doesn't always mean they understand well. You can tell someone what you've learned or what you're planning, and their reaction can shift your whole perspective. Maybe they laugh a little. Maybe they ask too many questions. Maybe they list all the reasons it won't work. And even if you try to brush it off, their words linger in the back of your mind like a shadow over what was once bright. Suddenly, you're not moving from a place of conviction. You're moving with caution, second guessing every step. That's why guarding your peace is so important. When you know something is precious, you protect it. You don't leave it where anyone can touch it because you know that not every hand is clean and not every voice is safe. Some people don't even have to mean you harm to cause harm. Their perspective might be shaped by fear, by bitterness, by their own unhealed places. And if you're not careful, their brokenness can bleed into your blessing. Your peace is a sacred space. It's where you and God meet without interruption, where clarity comes, where you can hear him without the distortion of other people's agendas. And if you're going to keep that space pure, you have to learn how to say, this is not for everybody. Not because you're hiding, not because you're ashamed, but because you understand the weight of what you've been given and you're not willing to let just anyone speak into it. There's something I've learned: once people have access to your truth, they feel entitled to shape it. They'll tell you what you should do with it, how you should share it, when you should act on it. And if you listen to enough of them, you start building according to their blueprint instead of God's. You might not even realize it's happening. You just notice one day that the vision looks different than when you first received it. It's smaller, safer, less daring. That's not because God changed his mind. It's because you let someone else's voice edit his promise. Guarding your peace is also about protecting your focus. Every time you allow outside noise into something God is doing in you, you risk distraction. Instead of working the vision, you're explaining the vision. Instead of nurturing what's growing, you're defending it from criticism. And here's the truth: if you spend more time defending than developing, the thing God gave you will never reach its full potential. And I know some of us feel this pressure to be transparent with everybody, to keep people updated, to make sure no one thinks we're hiding something. But transparency without boundaries is vulnerability without protection. You are not required to make everything visible just to prove you're being authentic. Authenticity is about being true to what God has given you, not about letting the whole world into your process. There will be times when keeping something to yourself is the most spiritual, most mature decision you can make. It's not isolation, it's incubation. You're creating an environment where the seed can grow without being trampled. You're keeping the soil undisturbed so the roots can go deep. And when the time comes, the fruit will be so undeniable that you won't have to explain a thing. So if you've been feeling the urge to share something just to get it off your chest, pause first. Ask yourself, am I protecting my peace or am I putting it at risk? Because once you let someone's voice into your space, you can't control the echo it leaves behind. And the wrong echo can change the sound of everything God has been saying to you. Protect your peace like it's priceless, because it is. It takes a certain kind of wisdom to know when to open your mouth and when to keep it shut. That wisdom doesn't always come easy. It's usually built through moments where you've spoken too soon, trusted too quickly, or revealed something before it's time and watched it backfire. Maturity teaches you that timing is just as important as truth. You can be completely right, but if you share what you know in the wrong moment or with the wrong people, the outcome can still be all wrong. Discernment is one of the greatest tools God gives us, but it's one we often overlook. We assume that because we know something, it's meant to be shared, but not every truth is meant for immediate release. Some truths are meant to be carried for a while, nurtured in the quiet, and only spoken when God says now. And if you rush ahead of his timing, you can find yourself in unnecessary battles, dealing with criticism you weren't prepared to face, or watching something beautiful get damaged before it ever had the chance to bloom. Part of discernment is reading the room, not just the physical room, but the spiritual one. You have to sense when the atmosphere is right for a truth to be planted and when it's hostile toward what you're carrying. Jesus himself said not to cast your pearls before swine, not because the pearl loses its value, but because the wrong audience won't know how to handle it. They'll trample it, dismiss it, or use it against you. That's why discernment is protection. It's knowing that your truth is too valuable to be placed in careless hands. Maturity also means you don't feel pressure to prove you know something just because someone doubts you. You're not moved by their disbelief. You're not provoked by their challenge. You understand that there's strength in holding back when it's not the right time. Sometimes keeping quiet isn't about being timid. It's about being wise enough to let God set the stage before you step onto it. There's a peace that comes when you learn how to wait for the right moment. When you're not rushing to get it out, you give yourself time to process it, to pray over it, to prepare for the weight of what will come once it's spoken. Because once a truth is released, you can't take it back. And the moment it's out there, it's subject to interpretation, to opposition, to misunderstanding. That's why God will often keep you in a holding season, not to frustrate you, but to strengthen you for what's coming next. We've all seen people who've shared something prematurely and had to deal with the fallout. Maybe they announced a plan before it was ready, and when it didn't happen the way they expected, they felt embarrassed. Maybe they opened up to someone they thought they could trust, only to have it twisted and spread. Those moments hurt, but they also teach us. They teach us that not every ear is safe and not every moment is ordained for revelation. Discernment is about alignment, aligning what you know with the right people, the right place, and the right time. You can't just have one of those pieces. You need all three. The right truth in the wrong time will still cause damage. The right truth with the wrong people can be sabotaged. But when all three align, you don't have to force it. God will open the door and everything will fall into place in a way you couldn't have orchestrated yourself. The more you grow in maturity, the more comfortable you become with holding things close. You stop feeling the urge to broadcast every blessing, every insight, every plan. You realize that the people who need to know will know, and the ones who don't need to know aren't missing anything. You stop fearing that silence means stagnation and start understanding that silence can be the most strategic move you can make. If God hasn't trusted you with something, part of honoring that trust is carrying it well. That means listening for his timing and not letting impatience or pressure from others push you ahead of him. Because the truth is, when it's time, you won't have to fight to make it heard. God will position you and your truth will stand on its own. Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent is not just wisdom, it's protection. If a truth is meant to come to light, it will. You don't have to pull it into the open before it's ready. You don't have to keep nudging it forward, worried that if you don't, it'll be forgotten. God's timing is not fragile. His plans are not dependent on your panic. When he gives you something, whether it's a word, a vision, or a deep knowing. He also knows exactly when and how it needs to be revealed. Your job is to carry it well until that moment comes. The hard part is waiting. We like movement. We like results. We like proof. And waiting can feel like being stuck, like you're holding on to something that may never happen. But the truth is, waiting is not wasted time. It's shaping time. It's the season where God prepares not just the thing, but you. Because if he gave you the opportunity before you were ready, it wouldn't last. And he's not interested in giving you something that will crumble the moment it's exposed. He's building something that can withstand the weight of being seen. You have to trust that there's a reason for the pace. Just because you're ready to talk about it doesn't mean the world is ready to hear it. Just because you can see it doesn't mean the conditions are set for it to thrive. Think about the way fruit grows. If you pick it before it's ripe, it might look fine on the outside, but it won't taste right. It hasn't had time to develop sweetness. It hasn't had time to reach its full potential. And when people experience it too soon, they won't get the real thing. That's why God sometimes holds things back, because he wants the version of it that will bless, not the version of it that will disappoint. There's also a freedom that comes when you trust his timing. You don't feel the need to rush. You stop looking over your shoulder at what other people are doing and start focusing on what's in your hands. You stop comparing your pace to theirs because you know that your lane, your journey, your calling has its own schedule. And when you really believe that you can rest while you wait, you can work quietly knowing that when it's time, nothing will be able to stop it. Sometimes God even keeps things hidden for your protection. There are seasons where if certain people knew what he was doing in you, they'd try to interfere. They'd try to sabotage it or pull you away from it. So he shields it, not because he's keeping it from you, but because he's keeping it safe for you. And when the season shifts, when the opposition no longer has power over it, he will bring it into the light in such a way that no one can take credit and no one can take it away. You've probably had moments where something you once held quietly in your heart finally came into the open. And when it did, you realized why you had to wait. You could see how God connected the dots, how he opened the right doors, how he put the right people in place, and how the timing was so perfect that you couldn't have planned it if you tried. That's the kind of timing you miss out on when you rush ahead. So the waiting is not punishment, it's alignment. It's God making sure that when the truth comes forward, it's undeniable. You won't have to beg people to believe you. You won't have to convince them it's real. It will carry so much evidence, so much power, that even those who doubt it will have to acknowledge it. That's why your role in the meantime is to protect it, prepare for it, and trust him with the release of it. Keep tending to it in the dark. Keep building in the quiet. Keep believing even when no one else sees what you see, because God has never needed a crowd to confirm what he's doing.